Study 8.7 Our Creator's Calendar, 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Shalom, this is the 7th in a series of studies on the subject of our Creator's Calendar. Outline of this study. 1. Introduction. 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. On 3 separate occasions, the religious leaders sought a sign from our Messiah. The sign he gave them, the only sign he gave them, was the Son of Man would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. That is 72 hours in the grave. 2. Which year was our Messiah put to death? Dionysius the Areopagite is mentioned in Acts 17:34. His writings record he was from Athens, received a Greek education and studied astronomy at Heliopolis. Dionysius reports observing an unusual eclipse of the sun on the day our Messiah was put to death. We need to exercise caution with this report. 1. Dionysius is Greek. He may be thinking in terms of the pagan zodiac and its syzygy, and those people who translated his writings are certainly thinking in terms of the pagan zodiac and its syzygy. 2. This was the most important event in Dionysius' life. It was the event which brought him to faith in our Messiah. Dionysius states he recorded the date of the eclipse, yet this date is not in his writings as we have received them. But clearly Dionysius saw something unusual on a day which he links with our Messiah's death. NASA has completed a list of 5 millennium of solar eclipses. During the 1st century CE, Earth experienced 248 solar eclipses. However, there is no solar eclipse in the months March-April in the years 26 through to 34 CE, the time we believe our Messiah was put to death. This correlates with the report of Dionysius the Areopagite, who observed a solar eclipse, but at a time when there should not be one. Amos 8:9. And it shall be in that day, declares the Master Yahuwah, that I shall cause the sun to go down at noon, and shall darken the earth on a day of brightness. Clearly, Yahuwah was proactive in causing the solar eclipse to happen. This is like the battle of Ai, when the moon stood still. The date our Messiah was put to death is arguably the most important date in all human history. Why would our Creator allow that date to be lost to us? Perhaps he did not allow that date to be lost to us because perhaps he had already told us in Daniel 9:24-27. There are 2 new moon conjunctions, one in 31 CE and the other in 34 CE, which come close to producing a solar eclipse and which give us a good idea of the solar eclipse as our Messiah was put to death. Now, I do not claim to know which year our Messiah was put to death, but of these 2 dates, I favor the 34 CE date, and this is based upon my understanding of Daniel 9:24-27, which is a double prophecy. 3. The Last Supper was not a Passover meal. The Hebrew word lechem equals the Greek word artos, which equals English leavened bread. The Hebrew word matzah equals the Greek word azumos, which equals the English unleavened bread. 1. The Greek text of Matthew, Mark, and Luke records Yahushua took artos, leavened bread. The Hebrew of Shem Tov's Matthew records Yahushua took lechem, leavened bread. 2. The Apostle Shaul was not present at the Last Supper, but 7 times he records artos, leavened bread, was used at the Last Supper. Never once does the Apostle Shaul use the word azumos, unleavened bread. 3. The Apostle Yohanan records, "He who eats artos, leavened bread, with me has lifted up his heel against me." Note this is a direct quote from Tehillim 41:9, which speaks of lechem, leavened bread. So Yahushua gave the sop of leavened bread to Judas, and Judas went out to betray him. 4. The Tanakh clearly states what was to be eaten at a Passover meal. A Passover meal involves lamb, bitter herbs, and unleavened bread. There is no wine at a Passover meal. The Last Supper involves leavened bread and wine. There is no lamb, bitter herbs, or unleavened bread. The Last Supper is not a Passover meal. The Last Supper is our Messiah's ketubah, his wedding contract with us. 5. Yahushua the Messiah is the King of righteousness and the King of Jerusalem, who took lechem, leavened bread, to bless Abraham and to bless his apostles. 6. If the Last Supper was the Passover meal, then they were to remain inside the house until the morning of the 15th. As it was, they left the house and went to the Garden of Gethsemane. 7. When Judas left the Last Supper, the other disciples assumed he was going out to buy something needed for the feast. If the Last Supper had indeed been the Passover meal, it would have been impossible to purchase anything, as all the shops are closed on the evening of the Passover. 8. The Apostle Yohanan clearly states the Last Supper occurred before the Passover. 9. Galilean Jews observed the 14th day of the first lunar month by fasting until the Passover meal. Therefore, all their preparations for observing the Passover meal had to be completed on the 13th day of the first lunar month. Consequently, the evening meal on the 13th day was their Last Supper before the fast on the 14th. They called the meal Suda Mafseket. 10. Yahushua followed the Galilean observance of Passover with the Last Supper on the 13th. This explains why the disciples initiate the preparation for the Passover a day early. But then he revealed he would not be able to continue with its observance with his disciples. 11. First century believers observed Passover as the Galileans had. They fasted on the 14th day of the first lunar month until the 9th hour, and then at the 9th hour they rejoiced as Yahushua's work was completed. The Christian Church labeled these believers Quatrodecimans and persecuted them. 4. The third day of the Shavua, the day of double blessing. Yom Shalishi, third day of the Shavua, also known as Pa'amayim Kitov, double blessing. The phrase "the third day" is based upon the creation account where, on the third day of the creation, we twice see the statement, "Elohim saw that it was good." This is the only day of the creation account where this statement occurs twice. The phrase "the third day" occurs throughout Scripture. The phrase "the third day" occurs throughout Scripture. After 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. On the third day of the Shavua, the third day since these things were done. You will never understand our Messiah's death and resurrection until you understand the third day of the Shavua, the third day of the pattern of 7. 5. 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The period of time we call evening twilight, the Hebrews called Erev. The period of time we call morning twilight, the Hebrews called Boker. A day of the Shavua is from sunrise to sunset. The sun is to rule the day. A day is divided into 12 hours as per a sundial. Night is from the end of nautical twilight in the evening until the beginning of nautical twilight in the morning. The moon with the stars to rule by night. A night is divided into either 3 or 4 watches. The Moedim appointed times, which are defined by their position in the Kodesh lunar month, are celebrated from Erev evening twilight to Erev evening twilight. For example, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Day of Atonement, and the Kodesh. The Moedim appointed times, which are defined by their position in the Shavua pattern of 7, are celebrated from sunrise to sunset, the sun to rule the day. For example, the 7th day Shabbat, the 3rd day of the Shavua, the day of double blessing, and the Kisi Yom, the throne day. Recalling the outline of the first Kodesh lunar month. First, the full moon opposition occurs. If the full moon opposition produces a lunar eclipse, then it may be observed as a penumbral, partial, or total lunar eclipse. However, most lunar months, the full moon opposition does not produce a lunar eclipse. At every full moon opposition, our Creator marks His dateline on the surface of the earth. His dateline is the meridian of longitude running through the sublunar point at the precise moment of the full moon opposition. Each lunar month, his dateline is in a different location on the surface of the earth. His dateline may be either to the east or to the west of the observer's geographical location. Our Creator decides whether you, in your geographic location, will have a 29 or a 30-day lunar month, not your religious leaders or politicians. And in any given lunar month, some geographic locations will have a 29-day lunar month, while other geographic locations will have a 30-day lunar month. The first evening twilight after the full moon opposition, the full moon rises after the sun sets. The full moon is close to the star Schemek, meaning branch, also known as Spica. This is the sign of the Kodesh, and King Shaul hosted his first banquet meal. Then the full moon night, when the white moon shines brightly from east to west, the moon with the stars to rule by night. In the morning twilight, the full moon sets after the sun rises. This sunrise marks the beginning of the Kisi Yom, or throne day. This day is a day of rest and worship when shofars or silver trumpets are sounded, the sun to rule the day. In the evening twilight, the full moon is at the woman's feet. This is the sign of Revelation 12.1, and King Shaul hosted his second banquet meal. The Moedim appointed times, which are defined by their position in the Kodesh lunar month, are celebrated from Erev, evening twilight, to Erev, evening twilight. King Shaul's first and second banquet meals are at Erev, evening twilight. They are bookends at either end of the first day of the lunar month. However, King Shaul's servants had to work and serve the banquet meals. Hence, the rest period must be sunrise to sunset. The Moedim appointed times, which are defined by their position in the Shavua pattern of 7, are therefore celebrated from sunrise to sunset. On the 9th day of the Kodesh, which is the first day of the Shavua, the Apostle Yohanan recorded 6 days before Passover, Yahushua travelled to Bethany. On the 10th day of the Kodesh, which is the second day of the Shavua, Yahushua rode into Jerusalem on a donkey and presented himself as the sacrificial lambs were being presented and inspected. On the 12th day of the Kodesh, which is the 4th day of the Shavua, our Messiah stated, "Behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures, for today and tomorrow, and the 3rd day I shall be perfected. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. And he also said, After 2 days the Passover, and the Son of Man betrayed. On the 13th day of the Kodesh, which is the 5th day of the Shavua, the apostles Kepha and Yohanan prepare for the Last Supper. Galilean Yehudim celebrated the evening meal on the 13th day of the first lunar month. They called the meal Suda Mafseket, the Last Supper. This was our Messiah's ketubah, his wedding contract with us. In the evening, which is the beginning of the 14th day of the Kodesh, the Last Supper, Yahushua's ketubah, his marriage contract with us, the Garden of Gethsemane, and at midnight soldiers arrest him. Note, it was dark, lanterns and torches, and a kiss as a prearranged sign. It was not a full moon. The apostle Kepha denied him 3 times before the cock crows twice. Yahushua led from Caiaphas to Pilate. Yahushua is nailed to the stake about the 3rd hour. The new moon conjunction produced a solar eclipse at noon, partial darkness from the 6th to the 9th hour, and total darkness for a few minutes when the veil of the temple was torn, and the sign of the Lamb in the sky. Yahushua said, It is finished, and died. Joseph of Arimathea lays his body in the tomb before sunset, and the women prepare spices and perfumes. At a new moon conjunction, the syzygy is earth, dark new moon, sun, stars. Here it is in the middle of the day. The sun should be ruling, but the moon has eclipsed the sun. The stars have become visible because the sun's light has been removed. And there is the dark moon in the star group Tela Hebrew or Aries Greek. Behold the Lamb of Elohim who takes away the sin of the world. On the 15th day of the Kodesh, which is the 7th day of the Shavua, this is the Shabbat. It is also the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Pharisees set a guard on the tomb, and the woman rested on the 7th day, Shabbat. Note the first night and the first day in the heart of the earth. Both the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the 7th day of the Shavua, the Shabbat, are rest days. The 16th day of the Kodesh, which is the first day of the Shavua, is the day of the wave offering, the sheaf of the beginnings of your harvest on the morrow after the Shabbat, a day of rest when you do no servile work. So the women are unable to anoint his body today. Note, 2nd night and 2nd day in the heart of the earth. Greek grammar. In ancient Greek grammar, there was an 8-case system. In New Testament Greek grammar, there is a 5-case system. So this is complex, but we can conclude 1. It is difficult to distinguish Shabbat singular from Shabbats plural, and the plural form for Shabbat is often used with a singular meaning. That is, the singular is used in a collective sense to mean plural. 2. The Greek word sabbaton literally translates to Sabbaths, not week. 3. The Greek phrase miaton sabbaton literally translates to one of the Sabbaths, not the first day of the week. 4. On some occasions, the Greek term Sabbath refers to one of the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The following verses read, And when the Shabbats, plural, were passed, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam the mother of Yaakov and Shaloma brought spices to go and anoint him. Then after the Sabbath, the 7th day Sabbath of the 15th, and on one of the Sabbaths, the 4th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, the 3rd and 4th watch of the night, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam walked to the sepulchre tomb. the 17th day of the Kodesh, which is the second day of the Shavua. And when the Shabbat was past, the woman brought spices to go and anoint him. The word Shabbat means rest. So this is saying when the rests were over. Which rests? 1. The rest on the 15th, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. 2. The rest on the 15th, the seventh day Shabbat. 3. The rest on the 16th, the day of the wave offering, the sheaf of the beginning of your harvests, on the morrow after the Shabbat. Note, third night and third day in the heart of the earth. So on the 14th the woman saw the tomb and how the body was laid, and the woman prepared spices and perfumes. Then on the 15th the woman rested on the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and also the seventh day Shabbat. Then on the 16th the woman rested on the day of the wave offering, on the morrow after the Shabbat. On the 17th, when the Sabbath rests, plural, were past, the woman went shopping for spices to anoint our Messiah. The woman did not expect their Messiah to be put to death, and the 17th is the first day since Passover that shops have been open. Note, there has now been 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Then, on the morning of the 18th, on the 18th day of the Kodesh, which is the third day of the Shavua, the day of double blessing. He is not here, for he was raised. Our Messiah was raised after 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, and on or before the fourth night. After the Sabbaths, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, as it began to dawn, the woman brought spices which they had prepared to the tomb. There was a great earthquake, and the stone was rolled from the door. The messenger said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Yahushua who was impaled. He is not here, for he was raised, as he said. Come see the place where Yahuwah lay." It is the third day of the Shavua, when I shall be perfected. It is the third day of the Shavua, the day of double blessing. It is after 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. It is the third day since these things were done. And when it was evening on that day, Yahushua came and stood in the midst, and said to them, "Peace be to you." 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, raised on or before the fourth night. Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Yahushua who was impaled. He is not here, for he was raised, as he said. Come and see the place where Yahuwah lay. Kurios equals Yahuwah. Jesus equals Yahushua. Yahushua is Yahuwah. See Studies 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. 6. Conclusion. 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth is the only sign our Messiah would give the religious leaders, and he gave it 3 times. That is, 72 hours in the grave. He was raised from the dead after 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, on the third day of the Shavua, the day of double blessing, and on the third day since these things were done. And the messenger of Yahuwah declared, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Yahushua who was impaled. He is not here, for he was raised. As he said, come and see the place where Yahuwah lay." Wow.